Hi there, how's it going? Just thought I'd make this little video review of the Panasonic GH5. I'm guessing this is probably not the first video you've seen about the GH5. In fact, I'll go out on a limb and say you've probably seen at least a dozen of them, and if you found this video then you're probably in a similar position to the one that I was in a few weeks ago, which is that you can't believe that it's 2020 and this may still be the best camera that you could buy at the moment, even though it's over 3 years old. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the process that I went through in deciding to get this camera. I'm not going to go into detail about the specs or anything. There's loads and loads of good videos online already about that. The only thing I think it's really worth talking about is this still the camera that you might want to buy in the middle of 2020, or maybe even later in the year, or even next year, depending on when you're watching this. Obviously I've got it here right now, so I eventually made the decision that it was the right camera for me, and yeah, just going to talk a bit about the cameras that I considered, what it is about this camera that appealed to me, and hopefully help you make a decision if this is the right camera for you. So first things first, I started looking into this camera probably 8 or 9 months ago. I'd actually looked at several other options. I even had a pre-order on a Sony a7 III for a few weeks back when it first came out, and it was pretty much out of stock everywhere. I put a pre-order in. I was convinced that I needed a full frame camera, and the a7 III sounded amazing, and I thought that's the one I've got to have. Put in a pre-order, and luckily for me, before it turned up, I realised that there's no way I could justify spending £2,000 on a camera that honestly I didn't really think I needed. So I kind of went back to the drawing board, looked at other options, and again this kept coming up as, you know, a really good choice if you're primarily doing video, but maybe you also want to take photos as well. I really only bought this for video, I'll be honest about that, but since I've bought it, I've actually taken quite a few photos with it, and it is a fantastic photo camera, so I kind of consider that a bit of a bonus rather than the reason I bought the camera. Just to talk a bit about what are the alternatives I considered, because if you're like me, you're a bit of a technophile, you kind of want to make sure you're getting the best thing. So I literally spent the last 6 to 9 months looking at every camera that I could find, trying to pick, you know, trying to find one that I thought was actually better than this. And again I just found one thing or another that I didn't like about the other cameras, or they were more expensive, or the lenses were more expensive, or, you know, too bulky to carry around. And I just kept coming back to this, as even though it's not perfect, and I'm sure you've seen in other videos, mainly the autofocus is what people tend to complain about. It's not amazing, but aside from that, it pretty much does everything that you could want it to do, unless you're an absolute professional videographer, in which case you're probably looking at far more expensive and capable cameras than this anyway. So what alternatives did I look at? I looked at some compact cameras like the Sony A series, and even more recently the Sony ZV-1 that came out just a few weeks ago. I thought that might be the perfect camera. You know, it had 4K video, it was compact, it was relatively affordable for what the budget I was looking at. The reason ultimately I didn't pick it was I read some reviews about the focal length, even at the widest angle, not being like particularly wide. So if you wanted to do, you know, like your sort of handheld vlogging style video, there were some people saying that it just didn't go quite wide enough, and especially with the image stabilization turned on, which then kind of crops in a little bit. And I didn't want to get another compact camera with a fixed lens that wasn't going to be versatile enough for me. The camera prior to this I had was a Canon GH5 Mark II, so I already came from the background of like a compact fixed lens camera, and it was a fantastic camera. I took it traveling with me, got some good videos, some nice photos as well, but I wanted to make an upgrade. One, I wanted 4K video. Two, I wanted interchangeable lenses so that I could have wide angle and also significantly better zoom lenses. Things like being able to plug in external microphones, which you can't do on the Canon. Just things like that to kind of, you know, elevate what I could do with it. And to go to another compact camera like the ZV-1 just didn't feel like the step up that I wanted. So I kind of backed away from that. Obviously there was the full frame options like the A7 III or the Canon EOS R and EOS RP. So the reason I didn't go for the EOS RP, even though on paper it's a really good camera, and the body price is similar to the GH5, but when you look at the cost of lenses, it's absolutely crazy. I mean, a decent Canon lens for the EOS R or EOS RP, about the same price as the body, you know, like £1,000 or more in the UK, and I didn't have the budget to spend like £1,000 on the camera and then another £1,000 on a decent lens, so I kind of ruled that out. And a similar problem with the A7, to be honest. The cost of the body was a little bit more than I wanted to spend. I'm kind of glad that I didn't go through with the pre-order in the end, because I think I would have spent way more money than I really could justify, and there were things missing from that as well. It doesn't have a flip round screen, which if you want to do vlogging you kind of need. Obviously you could put an external monitor on it, but then you're talking several £100s to add a monitor, and then you've got to mount it, and you know, it makes the whole thing bigger and more bulky. And it does have some issues apparently with overheating, especially recording 4K video, which is not ideal for me. The main reason I've got this camera, or bought a camera, was to take traveling with me. I run like a dedicated Greece travel website and YouTube channel, so once we're allowed to travel again with the COVID-19 thing, then I'm planning on taking this with me to Greece. And it's a relatively hot country, not the hottest place in the world, but in the middle of summer it's pretty warm, and I don't want a camera that's going to overheat, you know, after a few minutes of recording. So that ruled out the Sony. The other option that came very close to being the best one was the recently released Fuji X-T4, which I think is a very, very good camera from the reviews I've read and watched. But a couple of issues with that really is, one, it was still a little bit more expensive than I wanted to pay. I think at the moment the body only price is still around £1,500 in the UK. I picked this up without the lens, just the body, for $999 in the UK, which was a pretty good deal. At the moment, June 2020, it's kind of fluctuating between $11.99 and $9.99. So if you are looking at it like right now on Amazon and on Wex, wait for it to be under £1,000, because it is like jumping up and down between the two. I think, I don't know why that is, depending on stock, I guess, but definitely wait until this is under £1,000 in the UK before you buy it, because save yourself a couple £100 you can put in towards a lens or something. So you may wonder how I've got this lens, and also possibly what I'm filming this on right now. So that's a kind of interesting thing. I bought this lens and the one that I'm recording on now, which is the Olympus 12 to 40 Pro lens, on the camera that I'm using there, which is a Zcam E2C. So I actually bought that camera body before I bought this, with the intention of using that to do all my travel videos. I'm probably going to sell it, because now I've got this, I don't really need both, although I'm kind of tempted to keep it, maybe to use as like a B camera, or just for like studio work like this. It's a really good camera. It's obviously very different to this, which is DSLR for video and stills, whereas the Z-Cam is purely a videography tool, doesn't do still photos, but it does have some kind of interesting capabilities. You know, you can plug it into a network, you can control it remotely easily, you can record onto external drives. It does some stuff that, you know, most normal cameras don't do. Why isn't it enough? Because the rolling shutter on it is pretty bad. When you're recording 4K, you basically can't use it handheld at all. It's just way too shaky. You can just about get away with it on a gimbal. I do have a gimbal, a Xeon Crane, but even on the gimbal I found like just moving it around, it's not like super steady, so I was a little disappointed with that. And yeah, the image quality out of it's fine, but it is limited to 4K 30, which for most purposes is fine. I'm probably going to use this mostly at 24 or 25 frames per second, but I am interested in having the 4K 50 or 4K 60 for slow-mo, and this will obviously do 1080 up to 180, although people recommend you don't go above sort of 120. But this will obviously do great slow-mo for your B-roll, and the Z-Cam doesn't have the same capability. So I think the Z-Cam E2C actually has the same sensor as the GH4, so I'm told. So it's effectively the previous generation sensor to what's in here. So why did I get the Z-Cam at all? Well, at the time the body was $799 in the UK, and this was still, I couldn't find it under £1,200 to £1,300 for the body. So we're talking about £400 or £500 difference in price, and I thought for that price difference it was worth trying the Z-Cam, and if it worked for me then great, I've saved some money. But I always had in the back of my mind that the Z-Cam works on micro four thirds lenses, so if I bought the Z-Cam and I then invested in a couple of lenses and it didn't work out, then I knew that I could buy the GH5 and basically just reuse the lenses, and then all I would have is either a body that I needed to sell with the Z-Cam, or I could keep both. Haven't really decided on that yet. So yeah, I mean, that's basically it. I say I'm not going to go into huge detail on the specs of this because you can find many videos about it online, but I've had it 2 or 3 weeks now. Very, very happy with it. I think it's fantastic. The latest firmware, which is 2.6 I believe at the moment, is pretty good. Haven't had any technical issues with the camera at all. Takes great still photos. I might put a couple of them onto the video here just so you can get an idea. I'm not by any means a professional photographer, but I'm quite happy with some of the photos I've got, and actually surprised how much I've enjoyed using a stills camera again to take photos. I've also done some test video footage, but mainly I've bought this to travel abroad with it, which you can't do at the moment. So I'm just trying to get familiar with it and go through, you know, learn all the settings and things so that when I can travel, I'm kind of comfortable with it. I did buy a set of filters, so I bought a set of ND filters. I actually bought a pack, which I'll put a link for in the description, just in case you're interested in them. I also bought a couple of spare batteries and a charger. I will say the battery life on it seems okay, and I think people have said in the reviews like the battery life's really good. I don't know what they were comparing it to, but compared to the Z-Cam, the battery does drain on this like relatively quickly. Took it out the other evening, was out for about an hour. Kept turning the screen off when I wasn't actually shooting, but leaving the camera on, and took a few dozen photos and a couple of short video clips, and the battery had gone down from like full to I think 2 or 3 bars. So I think maybe you'd get 2 or 3 hours most out of it, depending on how much shooting you were actually doing, which is fine. So I've got a couple of spare batteries. They weren't expensive. I think they were like £20 or £30 for 2 batteries and a charging unit. So that's fine, but just be aware that, you know, they don't last forever. But yeah, really happy with it, really looking forward to using it in the future. And yeah, if you're like me and you can't quite believe that this could still be the right camera to buy in 2020, then I would say stop thinking about it and just buy it, because it is fantastic. And unless, between me making this video and you watching the video, something new's come out. I think there's talk about a GH6. I don't know when that's going to come out, but you can only hope that it would improve in every way on the GH5, in which case it would probably be the one to buy. I can't imagine them taking away many features that are in this, because people love this camera for what it can do. And it would seem silly that Panasonic would remove features that people have been raving about in this camera. So hopefully, if they could fix the autofocus, if they made this with a dual pixel autofocus like you get in Canons and other cameras, then it would be absolutely perfect. I think I don't think anyone would question how awesome it would be. So yeah, anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the video, and definitely buy this camera if you're thinking about it. I don't think you'd regret it, and I certainly haven't regretted it yet, and I'm really looking forward to going out and taking lots of cool photos and videos with it. So